Welcome to the C.S. Joseph Podcast. Today's episode, it's going to be ESTP related. It's kind of nice to talk about ESTPs from time to time. It's been so difficult to get the ESTPs of this community to actually be willing to spend money to get access to the Acolyte section and to ask questions, but it's nice that we finally have ESTPs doing it, getting some more sensor-related questions, because it just hasn't happened that often, so mostly because the majority of this audience are actually intuitives. Great to have an ESTP question. So, what causes ESTPs to hate life? That is today's question. And hey, if you want your questions like this answered, go to csjoseph.life/members, become a journeyman member, and then upgrade to Acolyte. Or if you're already journeyman, go to csjoseph.life/portal, and then click on the Not a Member button on the Acolyte section so you can upgrade to an Acolyte, upgrade your account. And then you get to ask me a question every month, and then I turn it into a YouTube video and a podcast episode for everyone within the Ego Hacker community to learn along with us. It's pretty awesome. And I believe also Chris Taylor will be answering questions as well, which will be really fantastic to have another perspective available to the Ego Hacker audience. So what causes ESTPs to hate life? I mean, there is a simple answer, but the thing is while it is a simple answer, it's actually pretty complex, because oftentimes ESTPs get so much crap. They get so much shit from other people when it comes to figuring out hey, you have this problem and you're just in it, and people end up not wanting to be around ESTPs because they find ESTPs as irresponsible by default. And then, which makes things worse for ESTPs, because then it's hey, now I'm super depressed because I'm not really connected to anyone, because people in my life just assume that I'm being irresponsible. And because of that, it's okay, well, why do I even bother? And then they just throw their hands up and give up. And they give up very easily because they're outcome focused. I think out of all of the SPs, ESTPs give up the most. Being outcome focused while having introverted intuition inferior, it's really, really hard on ESTPs. They're like that type that's if something goes wrong, especially something that they caused, they end up believing that it's better for them to not be around. And then they'll just withdraw entirely. They'll just escape entirely and get away. And then they'll leave you to pick up the pieces to the problem they caused, because they have this thing, well, it's better if I'm not even around. To which I'm just you know what? That's stupid. No, that's not okay. If you broke it, you're going to stay and you're going to fix it instead of running away and using the excuse of, well, you're better off without me. And you're actually going to fix the problem that you caused. This is one of the reasons why ESTPs end up in jail, because their introverted intuition inferior ends up poor decision making, ends up creating their freedom. They use their freedom. They spend their freedom on poor decision making, which creates messes or negative consequences for other people to clean up. That's why they end up getting jailed. That's the main reason why ESTPs end up committing crimes and going to jail. Poor decision making, right? Very poor decision making that creates negative consequences for others. And that's why it's so funny to listen to those STPs that are drug addicts and whatnot. It's well, I'm only harming myself, I'm not harming anyone else, so it's okay, right? No, whether or not you're aware of it or not, you're still creating negative consequences for other people. Their extrovert intuition demon is completely unaware of this thing called opportunity cost, which is hey, if I'm harming myself later, that's going to inhibit my capabilities to actually help you when you yourself are in a crisis, because you are actually close to me. So that's opportunity cost. That other person is losing out on the opportunity for you, the ESTP, to help them later, but you can't because you're too high to help. You see what I'm saying? You aren't just harming yourself, you are actually harming other people. Just because you're not harming someone right in front of you doesn't mean it's not real. And you all like to use that excuse and absolve yourself constantly. Here's the thing, you'll get no such absolution from me. Instead, you'll get condemnation, as I'll laugh at you and mock at you for being just absolutely pathetic with your excuses and utilizing other people's poor behavior to justify you behaving poorly. How about you grow up and actually be a human being? How about you actually have character? How How about you actually have substance? Oh, but you got to keep rejecting yourself over and over? Great. What, because you lack identity? Well, here's the thing, though. Like, the things that you're putting your identity, you're investing your identity into, isn't exactly anything remotely valuable. So maybe that's the issue. Maybe your FI trickster just doesn't even know what you should be investing in. Well, maybe you should find out, but then your TE critic has to actually grow up and be willing to ask other people their opinion about what is valuable, instead of you thinking you're smart enough to determine that yourself, because, newsflash, you're not. You're not actually smart enough to determine that for yourself. Might want to grow up. That'd be nice. It'd help everyone else out. But really, at the end of the day, like, where does this, irresponsibility, like, initially stem from? Well, it really comes down to, the one thing that causes ESTPs to hate life more than anything, and that is boredom. Boredom. But not in the way that you would initially think.
Are you anxious for school to start? Or?
Because boredom is not necessarily the actual issue. It's really kind of like, how there's no such thing as cold, right? Cold just means lack of heat. There's really no such thing as boredom. Boredom really just means lack of necessary or necessitous or desirable activities. So lack of needed activities or lack of wanted activities. And you put both of those together, and that is boredom. That's the definition of boredom, the true definition of boredom, right? Haven't you guys ever noticed that ESTPs, when they live their life, like, the one thing that they do more than anything is get distracted? And they allow themselves to get distracted. They allow themselves to get distracted because they're so bored, because their SE hero likes to jump from activity to activity to activity to activity. And if there's a lack of activities for them to do, they're just going to get bored. They're just going to fall apart. So that's really what actually causes them to hate life at the end of the day, is lack of activity. The thing is that they're also not sure which activity to engage in. They're not sure which action to take. And this oftentimes leads them to taking action without thinking. And taking action without thinking is what causes the irresponsibility. It causes the poor decision making. It causes the consequences for other people to come up. It causes the ESTP to end up imprisoned or in jail. Because, again, it comes down to the fact that they're making decisions that cause negative consequences or repercussions for other people. Because they are often thinking without acting. And that's their main issue. Thinking without acting. Constantly. Every day. All the time. And the thing is that often the thinking without acting is actually like driven. It's just driven by this need for distraction. And that need for distraction only comes up if there is no activities that they are aware of. No activities that they need to do versus activities that they want to do. The thing is, though, is that when facing activities that they want or that they need to do, it can actually overwhelm their SI nemesis. And then they end up not taking action on the things they need to do, which causes them to be even more depressed. And then they end up becoming escapists and like focusing everything they got on escapism, which is also really annoying. This is why oftentimes you see ESTPs not getting anything done, being super unproductive and a huge burden on people in their life, including their family, because they're so high on marijuana that they can't even do anything because they're just escaping from the pain that there's a lack of activity in their life, or at least a lack of activity that they themselves want to do. But while at the same time they're ignoring the fact that they need to be acting on things they need to do. And it's like, all play, no responsibility, right? And that just makes things worse for them. It actually alienates people from them. And ESTPs, they want to feel connected. They want to be intimate to people. Intimate to the people in their crew, their girlfriends or their bros, depending if they're a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. Like, that's what they're looking for. They want that intimate connection with fellow human beings. But fellow human beings can't feel connected to them if they're constantly a burden. You think they're actually going to feel connected? No, they're not, because they're being a burden, And that's one of the biggest problems. They crave connection so much, but they don't even realize just how lazy they are. Because they're not taking the time to do the things that they need to do. They want to spend all their time on things they want to do, because it's like they just But when it comes to needs, they're so worried about what they need to do, and nothing ends up getting done, and they just feel so overwhelmed. They need someone else to bail them out, and then someone else does bail them out, but then that's just enabling the ESTP's irresponsibility to keep spending all of their time, energy, and attention on what they want to do instead of what they need to do. And then they fill their life with distraction and escapism instead. Because again, it just comes down to needful versus wantful activities. SE Hero needs constant activity all the time. Activity, activity, activity. And if there's any downtime, their SI nemesis starts getting nostalgic. They start getting worried that they'll never have any activities again. And it's just entirely ridiculous. Thank God ESTP men have the male burden of performance, and they end up working, and having to work to survive for the most part. As per their curse, their God-given curse of curses the ground because of you, and by the sweat of your brow you will eat of it the rest of your life, and then you will die. Congratulations. But at the end of the day, so they have this male burden of performance, and women have it, interestingly enough, because it's okay, I want to be like a man, but then I end up being, this emasculating, almost every ESTP woman I've ever met. There's very few of them that aren't, like Megan Fox, she's not, but still, it's really hard for ESTP women in this society because their masculinity has been well cultivated by society, while their femininity has been entirely abandoned to the point where even members of their own family make fun of them for never being capable. They just assume that they're incapable of being feminine, which happened to Railgun all the time. Railgun had to deal with that crap all the time. And recently she saw her family, saw her grandfather, and her grandfather made this huge, he's an ISTP, made this huge thing where he was thanking his daughter about being such a great mother, and she's really become far more feminine than he imagined her to be. See, that's the thing about female ESTPs. They start out hyper masculine on that extreme, but then as they go through life, if they choose to be, they can be the most feminine out there. They can be the most feminine all the types through action on the other extreme. They just have to be willing to do it. And it's just hilarious to me to watch the most masculine of the females become the most feminine over time, and really make NTJs look bad, really make ISTPs look bad, and in some cases really make ISFJ or ESFJ women look bad. And it's just I just find that laughable. I find that laughable. Just goes to show that learned behavior actually really does beat nature in the end, as long as a person works at it. It's when you have natural talent versus someone who's studied and prepared their whole life. Like Denzel Washington. Do you think he has natural talent as an actor? Hell no, he doesn't. He takes acting classes on the reg in order for him to stay sharp, basically. He has to constantly put in practice, constantly have to put in hard work, and it's not really natural to him. It's just not. That's just one example. You could also look at the Mamba mentality from Kobe Bryant, or the amount of practice that Michael Jordan put in. It really comes down to spent effort, not natural talent. That's why learned behavior at the end of the day, nurture at the end of the day, often will trump nature. Even though nature represents up to 60% of a person, but that's just the foundation. What's built upon the foundation is their nurture. And that's why we have things like Octagram. If you want to learn more about Octagram, I recommend watching the Cutting Edge episode for August 2022 in the members area, in the Journeyman members area. csjoseph.life/portal, log in there, or csjoseph.life/members, become a Journeyman member there to get access. And I explain Octagram using my own personal experience and how my Octagram, my atypical Octagram, actually formed over time. So, but yeah, folks, initially I could have easily said, that boredom is what causes ESTPs to hate life, or lack of distraction is what causes ESTPs to live life. But really, it's them putting off their responsibilities. That's really the actual true cause. They need to be able to take responsibility, and they need to understand that the less they take responsibility, the less freedom they will actually have. Jocko Willink said it best: discipline equals freedom. Every ESTP in the Ego Hacker community needs to read his book, Discipline Equals Freedom. And if you want an initial taste at that, there's a song named Discipline Equals Freedom with Jocko in it, available on Spotify, created by Akira the Don. So you might want to check that out as well. Discipline equals freedom. And that is the key to causing an ESTP to love life. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.